me just pull this tab out. I'm dealing with like so many tabs. It's kind of crazy. Okay, let me also just exit out of Discord. Okay, and let me exit
Okie dokie.
out of WhatsApp, and I'm good to go.
Here we are. Here we are with Colborn from Museum of Crypto Art. How are you?
I'm doing wonderful. Thank you so much, Micol, for having us.
Of course. Yeah, so, obviously we've had like a lot of conversations around the new manifesto of the Museum of Crypto Art. But before going into it, I actually wanted to we talk a lot about Genesis and like history of crypto art, and I just wanted to get your story. Basically, like when did it all start for you? Like how did you get into the rabbit hole?
um,
Mhm.
wow, I guess, it goes back. The very beginning of my understanding was around an article that I read on prediction markets, right? And understanding prediction markets, and it actually informs, I think, a lot of the thinking that happens around this project. In that, it's been proven time and time again that the aggregate prediction ability of individuals is more powerful than any uh, panel of experts' opinions, right? Which is it's a very, very interesting concept, and that led me into Ethereum, and it led me into Augur, which took me to Golem, which brought me onto these exchanges where I was doing just deep dives on all these distributed models and all these token models. That was early 2017, and in there I participated in the Decentraland ICO, the land auction, and came back to virtual worlds in January of 2020. And that's when I found Somnium Space, kind of, fell in love with the aesthetic, purchased some land there, went in VR and saw this kind of, it was surreal, right? It's just green grass, blue sky. And it asks you, what is the world that you want to see? I've never been like a very passive investor. I want to, be active and kind of like realize the vision of these metaverse spaces. And in that, my intention was never to commercialize these spaces, but kind of understanding and believing that, if you build partnerships and you build long-term relationships with digital creators and you invite them into these spaces to make the most beautiful environments, well, then we're going to have something that's very special and very powerful. So, from these virtual worlds, using and leveraging NFTs as a means to begin building those relationships with digital creatives, that's really, that intersection is where it all began.
And what was the first piece that you ever collected?
It was
Your
it's great. It's proven very foretelling, and it was actually I purchased 3 pieces on February 12th of 2020. And the very first piece I purchased was a Miss Al Simpson piece called Lady Luck.
Nice,
Yeah.
nice. And she actually just had her, they had the Mother Ethereum like big exhibit this weekend. Um,
It's been wonderful to just, see her grow and her art evolve. And it's really incredible to see how everything has evolved in such a short amount of time.
mm,
And I think that really speaks to, a foundation in the beginning of people offering support, of people, of it being so open and collaborative, that we were able to kind of, get up an exponential learning curve together by sharing this knowledge and, being okay with not protecting things, but when you're open and you share it, it really lifts everybody up.
and when you first kind of, when you first like collected the first piece and you started like really getting into establishing like those connections and those relationships with the artist, like what were your I guess like the Museum of Crypto Art kind of like grew to become like what it is now. So how did it start? Like, what was your thinking at the very beginning? Like, did you start saying, I'm just gonna kind of, start building these relationships and see where it goes, or was there always like a kind of a vision where it is what basically has become now?
I had an idea for a large open air exhibition space, right? Of this museum space. And it was based on a trip to a museum that is in central Brazil called Inhotim, uh,
Okay.
which is kind of a multi-acre park and all sorts of different environments and terrains. And, you see an exhibition in the distance that catches your eye, and it was so different than any museum experience that I had ever had. Say, the Met, right, where you're kind of on a guided tour through, antiquities. You go through Egyptian,
Hmm.
you go to like Renaissance, and and you follow a very tight timeline. But this exhibition was so different because it was really, you were following your eye, right? So you might see something in the distance and it might spark something, and like a calling. And that shift in the narrative from being guided as opposed to you choosing kind of your own path was something that was very powerful, and I thought could be recreated in these metaverse worlds.
And so your idea was always kind of there, really, as the very start to build this kind of museum, like in the virtual world, like the biggest museum, really.
It was, I mean, it was all about, proving first use case for these assets, and also about framing and giving people a mental model that would begin to tell a story that these objects, this artwork was valuable. And a museum is a very easy mental model for people to understand, right? This is a way to say to the world that, like, we are preserving this history. It's not meant to pass. It's meant to be collected, shared, and shown. And the stories here are meant to be told. And we are able in digital space to upend, right, the laws of physics, and we can invite a surrealism that allows people to both see, kind of with the technology that is coming out and is still very novel, a new way to begin to experience art. And obviously during the pandemic, there was a realization that there was a tremendous need for social engagement, and people needed a place to escape, and they needed a place to feel connected. Um, and art is a wonderful way to both like capture these emotions and express these emotions that we were all going through in a time of like global quarantine. So how do we like create environment that awakens imagination, also at a time when people were really redefining what it
Hmm.
meant to exist in these digital worlds? And how do we begin to create spaces that, like, Zoom fatigue at the time was a big thing. And like when X Copy created the P's Doom Party, um, it was like, I think it like was wonderfully playful and captured a lot of what people were feeling of being just connected through screens, and there has to be something a little deeper, a little more human. And I was finding that in these virtual reality environments.
Yeah, that resonates a lot. I think something that is like so unique about crypto art, and I guess we'll go into it as well, but it's like how um, it kind of like relates to a historic moment, which is both like cryptocurrencies, but also, and decentralization and everything that goes around that, but also the pandemic, like the last, let's say, year and a half that we've collectively, the whole world basically has lived through. So it's really interesting, that kind of like intersection between these two phenomenons, really.
I think there was like a real dichotomy of feeling trapped and like feeling controlled and feeling like you might have like lost control and you might have like lost some like what was considered normal or regular, but at the same time like redefining it as a time to dive deep into yourself and to find your own power and to kind of reinvent what was possible. And I really truly believe that these spaces really facilitate and provoke that. And as things begin to open up and things begin to change again, how do we continue to, you know, I guess, push people to realize and accept what is different and what is possible?
Yeah, absolutely. And actually, going back to what you just said about, like, things kind of opening up and kind of, slowly going back to some form of, let's say, I wouldn't say normality, but let's say like previous life. How, part of like your manifesto and like Museum of Crypto Art's vision is to really like tell the story of crypto art, like history, right? So yeah, what is, and I asked you this yesterday as well, but I think it's worth going back into it. Like, what is crypto art, and how is the Museum of Crypto Art telling this history?
Yeah, I mean, I think crypto art is providing a visual language and a visual aesthetic to the cryptocurrency financial revolution. And, the biggest, I guess, leap in logic for most people is that a Bitcoin is an intangible object, right? You can't own a coin.
Mhm.
You can't, it's a number on a screen. So how do we say that this number is real and it represents money and it represents value? And that conversation around value also kind of ties into the art. But one of the most powerful experiences I had was that for years I'd been an investor in this space and I tried to explain to my parents what it is that I do. Nothing, right? But the second I put on the headset on my mother and she got to walk around the museum and she got to click on the artwork and it popped up with the title and the artist, and I could tell her like, this is an object that is on the blockchain. Suddenly it's very tangible and it's very real and it has that use case that we were looking for. And it's not something that just kind of like exists in a cold storage wallet that you can see on the internet. No, it's like living and breathing, and it looks, maybe 20 feet by 20 feet inside of this museum space. So it provides a deeper context and a deeper narrative where you can show all the benefits of it versus perhaps traditional art where there is no cost of storage. There's minimal fees to transfer this work. The ability to spin up and build an exhibition in a matter of days is possible, and there's no cost. And we can use, the technological tools that we have to really leverage and push out this vision and, begin to tell people and show people that a space like this exists. um, and we're going to be accessing these spaces more and more, just as we would a web page. We're talking kind of now about the spatial web, right? And it's just really profoundly powerful. And we know that a generation younger than this is how they've always socialized, be it like Minecraft or Fortnite or
Yeah.
Roblox or any of these, multi-billion-dollar games now. They are, generally not going to their friends' houses and playing as we might have in the pre-internet era, but they are connecting over these games and these experiences. and how can we begin to build something that is a bit of a Trojan horse to get them interested in art and internet culture and and ultimately cryptocurrency.
And looking, fast forward to what is Mocha's new manifesto, a new vision. Um, explain that and tell us like what it's all about and how you see it, in the future, like from now on.
Yeah, I think there's a couple things here, right? I think cryptocurrency in general has a culture problem, right? And at least outwardly, I think inwardly we know like the ideals that we want and are trying to express, whether that's disintermediation, decentralization, open access networks, the recognition that there is global talent but not global opportunity, and this being kind of a democratic tool, blockchain being a democratic tool that people can access. And then I think on the traditional art side, there is a legacy of a very cemented, structured, top-down definition of what culture is and what is important. And I think we're playing here with something very novel in that we have the ability now to aggregate and create groundswells and build culture and truth and the definition of what it means to be an artist in this era, from the bottom and bring it up.
Mm.
And that inversion is what I am very, very interested in. And this
And
is,
actually,
yeah, go ahead.
no, it's interesting because, like, as a collector, and as a curator, the bottom down approach is something that is, in a way, quite unique with the space. Like, we kind of um have built, or also, are used to like seeing very much kind of, even within the, crypto arts, like a top down, like there's, sales records, there's kind of like, first, second, third, that kind of approach. So I'm really curious to know like your process in like finding artists, collecting from artists that are actually not that well known, or are more kind of like hidden, like really hidden gems, because it's something that like I truly find when I look through your collection is like real hidden gems. So, how do you find those, and what is, in your way, the best, or one of the kind of bottom up approaches that is should be, looked at as well?
Yeah, I mean, the beauty of this space, right, is that there is so much data and there's open and transparent data. Um, and I think, the marketplaces, some better than others, create enough tools that if you are interested in digging and finding, you're able to do it. It was easier in the beginning. But even something as simple as going and sorting by oldest, right? That is a very, time-stamped chronological history of like what was created in the beginning by who and why. Um, and there are hidden gems in the beginning, and there are stories. I mean, I go back to this one piece that I have. I think it's just so funny. It's called Heartbreak, and it's the artist's name is Original Art Maker. I think they only minted one piece. It was about like the 300th token minted on Super Rare, and then they never minted again. Um, and for me, that story is like just so strange and so compelling. And but 2 years after they might have minted this piece, they accepted my bid on it. And I think that in and of itself is just so interesting that somebody could come in, they minted one thing, they go away, and then 2 years later, somebody like myself finds it. And I I don't know, but I've always been somebody that's been on the fringe, and I've always explored, especially in the beginning with music, finding something that is so out there or outlandish, or, you know, trying to find and recognize music from different cultures, it's very analogous to art. And ultimately, I want the collection to be as broad and representative of everyone and everything that has taken this up, because I think in that collection it shows just the power of this tool.
Yeah, absolutely. And actually, whilst you were speaking, there's something interesting that, you just said somebody minted a piece and then they never mint it again. But, to you, that piece is something that is very special. And actually, it brings up like a wider conversation, because as I'm sure but I've been in numerous conversations where, like, especially now when the space is larger than it was, collectors are sort of, in a way, might kind of dictate the way that, like, art or artists should be, like, minting, or how much or how often, or you should wait a month or you should wait 2 months. And to me, that's kind of unnatural and kind of goes against the purpose of creating and being an artist in the first place, right? So yeah, I'd like to hear your thoughts on this.
I just think that art driven by economics, it when you put rules, you ultimately limit creativity. And I think the best people are, the true artists are just creating, right? They're without any, I guess, concept of value, right? And you go back and you look at people. I took a very interesting cue from like Robness and Osiris in the beginning, where they just sold their pieces for basically nothing, right? And it's such an
Yeah.
interesting concept. And then value might accrue to them in the secondary sales, but like the saying is, right, if you love something, then you give it away for free. um and that for me is just, it's very powerful. And it also kind of gives you the freedom to just like keep going. You just like keep going and you keep creating. And I think once you begin to think of your art as a market and trying to like protect, you're no longer an artist, you're kind of an entrepreneur. And crypto art inherently mixes these things, two very, very like disparate fields, um, and forces you to. It's I don't have an answer, but I just love that the tool allows you the ability to create and express, and then from there, it first becomes your choice what you want to do with it, but then there is a whole secondary market, and there is no element of control, and kind of like giving up the idea of control is very fascinating to me.
Yeah, it's a fascinating thought. It's like kind of goes back to like the idea of like doing more of like an experimentation, really. Like, I think Rob Ness and Max Osiris are probably the pioneers in this kind of just putting things out there and seeing, for the fun of it, right? For the beauty of just having fun, and seeing how it goes, which is really, I remember myself, like, that was like basically when I came into the space, like, it was all about just minting random things that might, which poses a bigger question of like, what is art? But ultimately, art is creation. And the fact that you're just liberating and just putting things out there without kind of thinking, you know what if it doesn't do well? What if I sell? What if I not sell? What price should I put it at? Is kind of limiting in a way. And I guess part of crypto art is really that freedom to do whatever you want to do, and to create whatever you want to create without those barriers, right?
and and frankly, it goes back to a lot of the ideas that I'm trying to bring to this new version of the museum. Like, it's, of course, it's like a baby, and I love it, and I want to see it do well. But at some point, like, the child has to walk on its own and make its own decisions, right? And you have to give up that desire to control something, for the sake of kind of like the greater good, and the understanding that probably you, as much as you might know, may not know. You don't know everything, and you don't know what is best. And the more you empower like the most passionate people at any time to be able to come in and experiment and create kind of like this primordial soup to see what rises up and out, is all that you can do. So how do we create something that is both like backward looking and grounding in the history, but is also, you know, an innovation lab for the future, and recognizing that NFTs at this stage is so incredibly nascent, and anything can spring of it. And, you know, that ideas are incredibly valuable in that they can push and teach people new things. And if we do it from kind of like an open source and community approach, then we are able to, you know, I guess just more quickly learn and evolve and experiment together. Because we have to recognize, like, we're all just wading through the dark, and it had a mainstream moment, but things aren't perfect and things aren't set in stone. And when the manifesto speaks to kind of like, you know, refusing our own stasis, right? It's all to say that, right, like change is inevitable. And with technology, we see exponential change. And we as humans haven't really evolved to understand what exponential change looks like. And we're entering kind of a new paradigm of humanity, where we are turning over a lot of, like, again, control to algorithms and data and bots. And people joke all the time that, you know, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, these algorithms probably know us better than we know ourselves. And it's a bit of a scary thought, but, you know, I think the end goal here is to keep such like an open and adaptable mind, to say that just like change is inevitable and change is going to come quickly, and there is no way to kind of like dictate the path, and you will be kind of like shown the answers through other people and in this like collaboration environment.
And when you talk about, you know, the museum kind of being open source and being more of, let's say, like a community-led experience, what do you mean by that?
Yeah, you know, at the heart, right, the museum has been transformed into a foundation, like legally and structurally. I will be seeding, you know, a large amount of works into this permanent collection. The permanent collection will never be sold, and I am inviting other collectors and artists to contribute pieces in exchange for these tokens, right? So the idea is to build kind of a broad buy-in and representation of all, you know, artists that are here now, to ensure that like there is a common good, right? There is a public good in this space. It is working for the benefit of all crypto art. It's working for the benefit of all artists. It's not trying to like pick and choose favorites, and it's not trying to like say, you know, what has been deemed, I guess, like the most valuable in dollar terms is like only the art that we're going to show. And, you know, when you, it's, it's hard because, right, history has always been written by the victors,
Mm.
right? The approach to kind of like writing and aggregating opinion and telling people that, you know, all creation is valid and important, and that we should all kind of reignite and reawaken this childlike, imaginative spirit and desire to create. And at the same time also telling anybody that like what they do is art, whether it is like Ethereum coders, Ethereum programmers, because the people laying the infrastructure for this is art, and it's allowing other creatives to build on top. And how do you continue to really, it's all about an open source revolution. It's about like identifying and recognizing ownership, but then also kind of giving up control of that ownership. I think kind of the most like powerful and important themes that we will continue to challenge are laws around copyright and IP and fair use. Because in a digital world, you move so much faster than any of these things can like catch up with and protect you.
That's super interesting. And especially the part where, you say that this is a permanent collection and that it will never get sold. And
Yeah.
that sets, to me, in my opinion, sets, kind of a first really in the space, because we're so used to hearing, are collectors buying for speculation? Like, are they actually interested in the art? And ultimately, it's going to be a bit of both. Like it's always been the nature of the art world. But to have this kind of institution like within the crypto art space, it kind of sets some really strong grounds, right, for artists and collectors and curators and anybody really who is in the space to say, it's almost like, this is real in a way. We actually have like a museum, like it's happening, like it's not like some sort of bubble. I know we don't think it's a bubble, but at times it might feel like it's kind of like, following the cryptocurrency waves, but with this it's kind of like, okay, we have a collection, like there's a permanent collection that stays, and that will stay for forever as long as the blockchain lives, right?
I mean, let's yeah, gosh, it's generally, right, value and importance are so inextricably tied, right? But if we can abstract that and say like, we don't care about the dollar value, all we care about is the importance, right? And we recognize in this that something incredibly important is and has happened here, right? And if we can look at kind of fair distribution models, right, and say that everybody, regardless of how big or small, was important in creating this wave that will continue to be important and it'll be invaluable in the future. I always go back to a famous art dealer, forget the name. There's no price too high for something that is invaluable, right? And the way that art speaks to us, right? And the way that this art is communicating our culture and our values to me, that is invaluable. So I don't want to put a price on it, and I don't want to, because also in the beginning, which is so interesting, is that there were true patrons of the arts, right? There was a handful of people that were just patrons. And most of these people were totally anonymous, and they're very hard to get to. But you look at somebody like Moderats, and that's a true patron, right? And and it's just incredible that people cared. They were caring for one another, and they were exchanging these things so artists could continue their practice. And the only reason is that they just believed in the ideas, right? And I want to take it back there. And again, with the way things are moving so quickly, you lose a bit of the history. But it's never too late to go back and begin to cement it and tell these stories.
Yeah, absolutely. And actually, thinking like now that you mentioned moderates, like it kind of brought me back to, the early kind of times with Super Rare, and they were really patrons, and there wasn't any thought about, what would be the value of this like in 2 months from now, because actually, it wasn't even sure that it was going to be anywhere 2 months from now. Like there was more of a question of whether it could even exist 2 months from now. So it was really all about, like giving, supporting, and being like yeah, like almost like a friend to the artist, and just establishing that relationship. So yeah.
Even just the ability to have that direct relationship was so important. I always think that, something as little as just a bid is also permanent record, right? And that lives on the blockchain. And, even if I don't end up winning a piece, like I still will never forget, that bidding war that I got into with Moderats. And I was like, okay, like, like this guy wants this piece. He's gonna pay, whatever. I'm not, I can't compete. And it's it what a time, and how quickly it's all changed. But I love going back and looking at pieces that I didn't win, and knowing just that like my name is there, and I bid on it, and I said, hey, like I recognize this, and this is valuable. And um at the end of the day, like the ownership of something is not so important to me.
Mm.
um so yeah. Yeah, it's a lot to wrestle with, but it's incredibly like great. It's some of, I think, just the most important philosophical questions that we can begin to ask ourselves.
And on the relationships, like, obviously, like when you started doing this, I guess, change in a way, and rebuilding the Museum of Crypto Art, did you, reach out to any of the artists that are also part of like your permanent collection, or any of these collectors, and like ask for advice or just like thoughts on, what you were building? Like how did you approach that?
Oh, definitely. Definitely. Right? It's meant to, at the end of the day, be a home for the artists. So if I, if I can't do it for myself, right? I have to try
Mm-hmm.
and do it for them. And in this process, it's been a lot of back and forth, and a lot of sharing ideas with some of these foundational people. And I think up next, right, is the interview with Sparrow, and
Yeah.
just an incredible wealth of knowledge, incredible resource, somebody that has been here since the beginning, and creating just beautiful works at such a high level, and you know working to empower these voices is is core as well. I consider myself kind of like a servant to their needs and where they want to see this go, because it's obviously the dollar signs that get the press, but it's the ideas and ideals that will have like the long-standing importance, that will lay kind of the foundation for where this all goes.
Yeah, 100%. I completely agree. And on one last note, just to close it off, like what can we expect in the coming, let's say, the short term for the Museum of Crypto Art?
Yeah, it's super exciting. It's been a lot of just like watching the different puzzle pieces fall into place. um there has, like I said, been the creation of a foundation, an international foundation. The new website will launch probably today, or tomorrow, or very, very soon. But the new website is done. The tech stack is done and in testing, so you can expect like kind of the official launch of the token coming soon. There will be the launch of a new museum building that I just saw the initial design for today. It's gorgeous. I cannot wait to show everybody this. There will be the installation of the Genesis collection into that building. There will be a big opening event. That will probably be in 2 to 3 weeks. And then there's going to be an airdrop of all of these tokens to the 63,000 OpenSea users prior to December, the end of December in 2020. And there will be, weighting based on, the earliest activity. So, and that will all be done on Polygon, so that transactions will be effectively free and instantaneous. And of course, those can be brought from Polygon back to Ethereum. And then kind of rolling out of different exhibitions that follow kind of the different access points that we're giving to people, whether it's going to be kind of collector museum wings. So, giving other people the chance to showcase their collections in a Mocha museum wing. The idea of community galleries, which will be kind of expressing the culture of different projects that are in this space. And then the ability for, I guess, people to have museum rooms and curation competitions and kind of, mixing and matching pieces from, the community collection and maybe their own collection and trying to tell a story through the arts and empowering people to be able to tell their own stories this way.
That's amazing. It's a true kind of social museum in a way, like really like a community place for collectors, artists, curators to join together.
It's really different, and I'm really, really excited.
Amazing. Well, thanks so much, Colborn. It was great to speak. We have Sparrow coming next, which I'm very excited about. And so we'll be talking to her and, talking about her Genesis piece as well, which is part of your collection.
Amazing.
So yeah,
Thank
thanks
you.
a lot.
Yeah, real pleasure as always.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.